Welcome to Pharmacy in Focus, where I will be having pocket-sized conversations on current topics and interests relating to pharmacy and the wider health sector. My name is Sharina Basan, bringing you Pharmacy in Focus on behalf of the Pharmaceutical Society of New Zealand. Welcome to this episode of Pharmacy in Focus. Pharmacies in rural and regional areas face many challenges, as do their communities. We know, due to where people are located, some find access to healthcare quite challenging, particularly to secondary and emergency care. Some of these people in rural communities don't have access to cell phones or even internet coverage sometimes. We have a workforce shortage as well across the country, yet this has been an issue in the regions for quite some time, meaning many of these pharmacies rely on locums. In recent months, there have also been weather events such as floods, cyclones, slips and road closures, which have also affected many areas of Aotearoa. Today, I am talking to Lanny Wong, the owner of Mangawai Pharmacy in Northland, about some of these challenges. Welcome, Lanny.
Thanks, Serena. Thanks for having me on the show.
In the last few months, Lanny, you have experienced floods and cyclones. Reflecting back, can you tell me what happened when the first floods arrived on Auckland anniversary weekend?
Yeah, it's certainly been quite an interesting few months. I think everyone remember the Auckland anniversary weekend flooding where 4 people lost their life. And so, the rain actually started sort of in Northland. And it's funny because I was in Northland that day and I was traveling down to Auckland because it was actually my 10-year wedding anniversary as well that weekend. So we were following the storm actually. So when we got to Auckland, there were no sort of severe weather warning, but so we decided to still go out for dinner. So we travel into the city and basically got to experience the full flooding in its glory, if you like. Spend 2 hours trying to get back from Auckland, going through flood waters and things like that. So, but that flooding didn't affect Northland as bad, but it certainly was a little gentle wake-up call for everyone in Northland that there was some road damage, but it wasn't anything the community couldn't fix themselves. They just sort of get their diggers out and everyone just clear the road, and that was fine. So that was the first experience with the flooding, and then subsequently sort of more happened after that. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, isn't it? Because it's having to be your 10-year anniversary. You wanted to have a night out to celebrate, and that's what you happen to be faced with on that particular day.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that other subsequent events happened after that, and Cyclone Gabriel would have been one of those. How did that affect you and your community?
Yeah, again, when Cyclone Gabriel arrived, Northland was actually the first place that got hit. So we were sort of bracing ourselves and, worrying about what the damage was going to do. I remember it was quite a scary sort of moment. There were lots of surface flooding and, obviously there were some leaks at the pharmacy itself, and the water was sort of building up at the back. But, I was very lucky where I am, there was no sort of further damage, but certainly for the community, there were lots of flooding and people couldn't get home. There were sort of community centres set up for people to stay overnight. So, and then after that, I remember, it was difficult to get hold of everyone. So, internet connection, cell phone connection were very patchy at the time, but it sort of took us quite a while to figure out that, all the cell tower was out. But, because I was at work most of the time, the fibre network was still going. So I was quite lucky in a way. So everything at the pharmacy was still fine, but it's mostly when the staff get home, when the rain is still going, we couldn't get in touch with each other because there were no cell phone coverage. And being in a rural area, not everyone have got fibre line to their house. So a lot of people do actually rely on cell phone and cell phone internet, like 4G internet. So when that was out, there was a good 4 to 5 days where there were no cell phone connection. The road was dodgy. So once the staff go home, and after the heavy rain, we actually just have no idea whether anyone can come back to work, because the road was quite dodgy. Quite a few sort of bridges were flooded over, and there were a lot of detours that people had to try and figure out. So it was a bit challenging, but I think somehow we managed to get through it. Like, I remember one day I couldn't get to work, and I had to rely on one of my pharmacists to come from Waipu. She had to get to work to open the pharmacy, and she had to do this massive detour. And because she didn't have any cell phone coverage, or it was quite patchy, we had to keep sending her photo of Google Maps to tell her which way to go. So that was quite an interesting process, but somehow we just all adapted, and yeah, she got there in the end, and it was fine. So again, we managed to open the pharmacy, and yeah, but like nothing's happened, and provided the service and carry on and go home. And I think, this is also something like rural communities quite good at. Like, we just sort of fix our own problems sometimes. We're quite used to sort of having power outages, and like internet have always been a bit unpredictable. So we always, it's sort of the same thing we've faced before, and we have strategy to deal with it. Except during the Cyclone Gabrielle period, it was a good 4 to 5 days of like absolutely nothing. And I remember going home after work, it was just myself and the AM radio. There was sort of, it was back to basic life before internet sort of situation. It was quite interesting. And it sort of made you think about, building more resilient in the business. And so I started researching Starlink and all that. And obviously, communicating with colleagues from Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay, hearing what they're going through and trying to think about how I can make my pharmacy more resilient for the next disaster, if you like. Which is, this is an interesting way to think about things, but it certainly got me thinking a lot about it after Cyclone Gabrielle.
And you also mentioned the AM radio. How many people would have AM radios now? Right?
No, I was lucky. I was actually one of the lucky ones. I have, a battery-powered AM radio at home. so I still have power, which is really nice. But, it was nice to have that AM radio, because I can actually tune into a radio station to actually find out what's happening with the storm. So it was quite devastating as the news come through. But you don't feel as alone with the radio on. It's very, it certainly makes you rethink a lot of things during a disaster like that.
That's right. And you mentioned how the community just gets on with it. You mentioned how people come out with their diggers if they need to help out, and that's, I guess, the environment that you work and live in, which is amazing. And you also mentioned that unfortunately a lot of people up in Northland are used to power cuts, and so they you're ready for them to some degree. And what other challenges did the community face?
Yes, power cut was a really big one. So when you live in the rural New Zealand, a lot of people tend to have a big chest freezer full of food. So that was quite a big loss. Many family lost their entire content in their chest freezer, sometimes 4 of them. But again, we are used to power cuts. Some people donated generators or just pull out the generators from the shed and start using it. And in the community page, people just gave their food away, and that actually came in handy because there were people living in shelter at the time, like just in the community centre, because they couldn't get home. So all those food was sort of donated to the community centre as well. So in some way, it was like a ecosystem of people helping each other out in a really bad time. And obviously, there were people that had lost their houses as well, and the community sort of started give a little page to help. Actually, after Cyclone Gabrielle, there's actually another cyclone. I actually cannot remember the name of it, but that causes a couple more damage to more roads. And again, the community just got together, worked with the council and fixed the road with the diggers. And it took a little while, it took about a couple of weeks, but they got it done. And that was all solely community effort, with a bit of working together with the council. And I think, like that sort of community spirit is quite important in a rural place, because we're so isolated. And, like during all the cyclone and flooding, we've always got delivery issue because it was difficult to get products, things sent from Auckland, because the road between Auckland and Northland had always been very unstable. And every time there's a storm, we all sort of brace ourselves. And again, like you rely on the community again. Every time there's a big storm, the first person who's brave enough to try the road to Auckland will always post on Facebook and go, I just got through to Auckland, so the road's fine. So that's where you sort of get the idea whether it's safe to travel. And yeah, the same again going the other direction too. They sort of say, oh, I just traveled to Whangarei. So it's really nice to see people coming together like that. And you can only really achieve that with a tight-knit community that look out for each other. And that's a really nice thing about a rural place, I guess. Yeah.
That's great. And you've mentioned, if someone's the first person that's managed to get down to Auckland or to go up to Whangarei, they'll post, and that's great if you have that communication network and your 4G's working, or other forms of communication are working to do that. But there was a period, you said, of a few days where you didn't have that, or it was quite unstable. With locums, how did you manage then? Because I know you had road closures. Did you have the road closures and problems with communication while you had locums coming through, or was that after the big events?
Yeah, no, that wasn't too bad actually. So during the disaster, it was mainly just my usual staff, and really we actually don't know. Like I do have a couple of pharmacists coming from different direction. I can get to work fine. And really when I'm at work during that time when we didn't have any communication, it was just really a wait and see situation to see who turns up. But like I said, during that time, everyone just made it somehow. There was some detour, there was some driving through roads that they're not sure whether they should be going through, but everyone's just sort of made it. We're pretty resilient actually. I know a couple of pharmacists that wasn't sure whether they should go through this road, but they try anyway, because it was just one of those things, like you just want to get there because you sort of think, oh, you have to be there to sort of help the community.
And during actually, no, if we just go back a little bit, I think in a previous conversation you mentioned a locum struggling to get through, and did you have to provide some accommodation for them or something?
Oh, yes, yeah, no, that was actually not the cyclone. That was just a recent storm, and it was a couple of weeks ago. Oh my God, we've had so many storms, and I just can't even remember now. Yes, the most recent storm. Yes, all the roads were shut. So the road to Auckland was shut, and this is all, I guess, related to Cyclone Gabrielle. It started there, and it's sort of still carry on, and the effect of it, we're still suffering from it today. So in the most recent storm, that was shut. So the road to Auckland was shut. We weren't 100% sure whether we could sort of go north, and we just sort of thought, well, why don't everyone just come over and stay at my place for the night, just in case, if you can't, even if you could get home tonight, you might not be able to come back to work the next morning. So yeah, so we just sort of hunkered down at home and just got some takeaways. Yeah, so that's right. Sorry, I forgot about that. And I remember that day, by about midday, everything was shut because the wind was picking up. So the doctors were shut, all the other, cafe and general food places and shops were shut. So it was sort of back to lockdown. It was just the pharmacy and the supermarket again that's open to our closing time. Yeah, one of those sort of weird sort of day, but yeah, and we just sort of took the approach that, oh well, we'll just best to stay safe. And so I had a few staff staying at my place, and we just got takeaways and chatted all night, go to bed, and then we all come back to work the next day like nothing's happened. It was I think we've learned a lot in the last few months on how to sort of cope with situations like that. And I don't think anyone really felt stressed from it. Like, it's a bit annoying, if you like, every time something happened, we sort of have to look at the traffic, we have to worry about the weather, we try to predict the weather as best as we can, but I think we just sort of make the most of it that time when that storm came, and we were pleased that it only lasted 24 hours rather than 3 to 4 days, which we're really pleased about. And then we just got on with it next day.
And as you say, everyone was safe, and that's
everyone was back to normal.
And during the cyclone, one of the cyclones, there was a waiver for the co-payment, so people could come up and pick up their prescriptions and not be charged for them. How was that received by the people that came into your pharmacy?
Yeah, that was really good. There was a lot of good thing there were a lot of good things that happened in the community, but for something that's really relevant to pharmacy, that co-payment removal was just really helpful. Because Cyclone Gabrielle sort of hit in February, and February sort of when everyone had to start paying for their prescriptions again. And it was just one of those times where things were a little bit uncertain, a little bit stressful for everyone. And we did have people that are in Mangawhai that are not from here that couldn't get home. And we did have to do some emergency supplies for people that came displaced. And just not having that co-payment there was just make a lot of things really straightforward. So if they are misplaced or they're stuck in Mangawhai, they can't get home, they needed some medicine, they can request a script from their doctor, get it sent to us, and then we can just dispense it without any sort of additional cost to them. It's, for that whole month, it really changes the way we do things. Like we can just focus on checking in on people, how they're going after the cyclone, sharing stories, and just, generally help them out with any sort of medicine query without having to worry about whether they can afford this medicine. But yeah, I think my community is pretty good. Like we all really look out for each other. But certainly just not having that layer of stress there was a really welcome thing. And people are just so grateful when you tell them, oh, there's no charge. They're just really pleased that because and I think it's just a nice little relief during a very sort of stressful, uncertain time for everyone.
And speaking of the co-payment waivers and the effect that had during the cyclone for your community, I know that you, alongside some of your other pharmacist colleagues around the country, were advocating and had asked for people's views and collected stories on the co-payments and the push for co-pays to be scrapped. In the recent budget, the current government has said that the co-payments will be gone from the 1st of July. So what are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I think that's great. I think I think our profession should be really happy with that. I feel like, this is one of the really good things that's happened to pharmacy. And the best thing about it is that now everyone knows the $5 is a tax. And I think, this Otago study by Professor Norris was like a little kick for, the six of us that really work together. I think the study really helped us articulate what that $5 means to pharmacy. And I think it really sort of helped us understand that, this is a barrier, and this is a barrier that is very unique to pharmacy. And pharmacists actually have a really good understanding of what the $5 actually mean and what sort of effect it have on people. And running that survey was just one of those things that we thought it's a good way to just sort of gather, I guess, just write things down. If it's not written down, it's not true. Like we all know the $5 causes a lot of stress at our workplace and to our patients, but it's never been discussed like in an official way. Like we discuss it among colleagues, but we've never really written it down. We've never really reported it to anyone. We've never really make a fuss about it, if you like. Like we're quite, as a profession, I think we're quite resilient. And I think just having that co-payment removed just shows that our voices are heard by the government. And I think the best thing about it is that it's actually show New Zealand, Aotearoa, that, pharmacists, it's actually a really important and integral part of the community and the healthcare network. That's probably the best thing about this budget announcement, and also, helping patient and just removing that barrier. Yeah, and I'm really pleased with it. And I think, this is something I know the Guild's been working on it for a very long time, like since 2019. And Rhiannon Braun from the PSNZ, the president of PSNZ, come out and said this is something society have worked on for a number of years. And, yes, I know the six of us been on the media recently, and we were very happy to put our name to the to the issue and advocate for it. But it's something that our profession have been crying out for a very long time. And I think it's fantastic that, our voices are listened to. And now it's been discussed by everyone, and everyone finally understand that the $5 is a tax and it is a barrier to basic need, which is basic medicine.
Let's now change topic just a little bit and move on to the mentoring that you did with GirlBoss Edge Healthcare. Amongst all the challenges that you have faced over the last few months, and the other roles that you have taken on when it comes to being the face, I guess, in the media around the co-pays. I mean, you've been incredibly busy, and that's on top of being a parent and being a business owner and everything else that you do every day. But you're still able to find the time to be a mentor for this GirlBoss program. What made you decide to do that?
Oh, I saw it in the PSNZ newsletter. And then I looked at it and I thought, gosh, that's such a good idea. I wish there was something. I think there was something similar when I was that age. And I just thought, gosh, this is like how everyone sort of wished you could go back and talk to your 16-year-old self, and what would you say to yourself then? And I sort of thought, gosh, this is a bit like that. But then I can talk to another 16-year-old and see if I can help them in any way. So I just, I didn't really think about it. I just saw the newsletter. I thought, this sounds like a good idea. I'll just sign up. And then the, emails started coming through. And so I just scheduled some time to sit down. There was only a 1 or 2 hours commitment. And yeah, it was one of those situations. It's like, if I can talk to my 16-year-old self, what would I say? And I sort of came in with that mentality and sort of chatted to these amazing young wahine. They are going to go far in the world, and it's a good reminder of what it used to be like, where anything was possible, all dreams are possible. And I think one of those things that I do want to encourage more people into the profession. So I was quite passionate about that, and one of my, I guess, speaking from a personal level, is I am an immigrant into this country. So I came here when I was 13. I have quite a different upbringing in Asia. So in Asia, the culture is that you've got to sort of have a set idea of what you want to be. There's a lot of pressure in schooling to make sure you're doing well and all that. And then when I immigrated here, I recognize there's quite a big difference between that culture, like over here. In New Zealand, there's more of the, you'll figure it out, what you have to do, which is, there's pros and cons in sort of both culture. But what I do recognize with the Kiwi culture is, I think sometimes, it takes a while for a young person to figure out what they want to do. And especially for tertiary education, like courses like pharmacy and medical school and perhaps nursing or dentistry and things like that, you need some really good foundation. So you need to have done all the prerequisites when you're at high school. And often I do worry that young people might be missing out if they haven't thought about it, or they haven't been advised that this is something you need to have as a prerequisite before you're allowed to get into med school or dental school or pharmacy school. So, and I think it's important to actually start quite, get that message out to young people when they're still at school, just to make sure, hey, if you're interested in health, if you're interested in science, if you're interested to become a doctor or a pharmacist or a nurse, these are the subjects you should be studying. You should be, aligning yourself. And I sometimes worry that perhaps young people didn't realize that. It wasn't that they're not interested. They just didn't know at the time. And by the time they decide when they're going into tertiary education, that might be the barrier for them to choose health, because they haven't done the foundation courses. So yeah, I see GirlBoss as an opportunity to just sort of check in on young people, to see how they are, and a lot of them are interested in science, and you talk to them and you sort of give them some advice about how to achieve their dream. And it's a fantastic thing to do, and I thoroughly enjoy that experience, and I would encourage every other pharmacist to participate in that. There was some really good wahine on the mentor course. I saw a few big names out there in pharmacy. So it's lovely to see. And I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for a young person to, to have that sort of guidance from some really amazing other pharmacists as well that was on the mentor course.
That's great. And you've mentioned a few things there around the benefits you had to being a mentor and the benefits that you see. But one of the things you mentioned that really resonated is, for some of these young wahine, especially if they might be the first people in their families interested in health, that you're right. If you don't know what subject you're supposed to be doing at school that will help you move into these types of professions, well, then you just don't know. And so then you can get it, you can end up 18 and trying to get into something, and suddenly there's a barrier there because you didn't do certain sciences, or you didn't do certain maths, or whatever the subjects were that you missed because you didn't know that you needed to have it. So that's actually a really good point, and another reason why the connection with the younger teenagers that are trying to figure out what they want to do or have an interest, how important it is to have that conversation early. So that's great. So
I 100% agree with that. Yep.
So you do it again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely be signing up next year as well, and I'll encourage everyone else to do it too.
Wonderful. And just on a final note, we've talked about quite a few topics today, from the weather events to the effect of the copay removal in your community, to the mentoring. What would you like to say about the benefits of working in a rural part of Aotearoa?
Oh, I think it's a different type of lifestyle. I won't say it's for everyone, but, I certainly enjoy it myself. And I think when you're in a rural part of the country, you are actually quite an important person in the community. And you're often, in pharmacy, you're often the first point of call. When people want something, they'll actually come and see you, and you get taken quite seriously in the rural community as a pharmacist. And that's what I've noticed in my time working in sort of smaller town and rural places. You are the health professional that a lot of people trust. Yeah, it's a bit daunting sometimes, because I think when I was younger, I definitely had quite bad imposter syndrome. And when people come in and share some really really important information about their health with me, I don't know why I deserve to be told all these information, but then I realized I am the pharmacist. I'm it. If they don't talk to me about it, there isn't really no one else. They could make an appointment to go see the doctor, but you're the next best thing in a way. And and that's a real privilege to really have that. And I was really encourage everyone to, even if you're not interested in rural, just come and do a sabbatical for a few years and try it out and see if you like it, and see if you notice the difference between working in a rural workforce than compared to an urban sector.
Thank you. And when we were having a conversation before, Lanny, you were talking about growing a rural workforce because you do struggle with a rural workforce. Do you have any comments around growing the technician or assistant workforce within your pharmacy and the wider community?
Yeah, I can share a story with you. So this is the amazing thing about being in a rural place. So, there was a career advisor that posted in the community Facebook page looking for sort of end of year. This was end of last year, actually. So looking for apprenticeship job for high school leaver, but mostly for boys, actually. So, they were looking for jobs for boys to get into, like building, plumbing, or electrician apprenticeship type job. And then I looked at that, and this is my feminism sort of coming out, and I thought, oh gosh, girls can, live locally and get a qualification too. So I'm going to write to the career advisor and tell her that, pharmacy can offer a pharmacy technician course, and a school leaver might enjoy this, and they'll be able to live at home and, live in the community and work in the community and be quite an important person in their community in the medicine supply sort of industry, if you like. So I wrote back to her, and she sort of took on everything I said and said, oh, I'll write an ad and see if there was any interested party. And that's when I found one of my technicians. So I didn't get a girl, I got a boy. So he's now training at Mangawai Pharmacy as a pharmacy technician. And I think this is the best thing about a rural pharmacy as well. So we were able to offer something for the community, to get a qualification in pharmacy. And I think, and they can remain in the community and work in the community that they love, and they are committed to the people here, which is fantastic. And my other technician here have been in the pharmacy and for about 30 years. Well, not in this pharmacy, but in the pharmacy in the area, and she is a really important part of the community, and everyone just knows she's from the pharmacy. And yeah, I just think this is something that really doesn't happen in a lot of places, but you definitely find it in rural places where they've sort of it's like a homegrown sort of talent, if you like. And I think it's really amazing to be able to provide that as a pharmacy, and it's a fantastic thing to see when you can sort of grow someone straight out of the community. And right now we can definitely do that via the pharmacy technician course. And I don't know, maybe one day it could be a pharmacy course where we can grow pharmacists straight out of the community, so they're more likely to stay back and give back to the community.
That's great. And I think it's great that you've got a male on staff now as well. There are some male pharmacy technicians, but we certainly know it's a female-dominated workforce. So maybe there'll be more males that will join the network. And
he thoroughly enjoyed it, and he said it was one of those moments he actually thought he wanted. Yeah, he knew he wanted to work in a pharmacy, and then that ad came up literally the next day when he's made up his mind. So so he applied straight away, and now he's here. So it's fantastic.
Very fortunate.
Yeah.
Great. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today, Lanny. I think you gave a lot of insight into what's been happening in your part of Northland, in your community over the last few months. And gosh, there's certainly been a lot. Great to know how resilient the community is, and I'm sure that's replicated around other regions around the country as well. But really good to be able to talk about that and how people get together, and how the community spirit that's happened over the last few months when people have been in need and the roads have been closed and you haven't known what's going on or where's safe or even what's happening around the rest of the country. Great to hear that you'll be interested in further mentoring opportunities in future as well. And yeah, be great to keep in touch and see what happens in the coming months.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show. It's it's been really good to be able to talk about it.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Lanny.
Thank you. Thanks, Serena.